overseas service of Radio Republic Indonesia, broadcast in 9 language services: English, French, German, Dutch, Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese, and Indonesian. Voice of Indonesia is broadcast via shortwave 3325 kHz and 4755 kHz, and via streaming on voanews.id and RRI Digital on mobile application. We present various programs for you: Diplomatic Forum, The Session, Indonesian Wonder, Miscellany, Let's Speak Bahasa Indonesia, Indonesian pop and regional songs, international musical entertainment, as well as news and information about Indonesia and abroad. Voice of Indonesia, from Indonesia to the world.
Hello, Voice listener and RRI viewers. Welcome back to Indonesia Today with your host, Ray, where I'll be accompanying you for the next 1 hour. And right now, Voice listener, we are undergoing to the special episode of VOI Talk right now, and in collaboration with the Overseas Indonesia Students Association Alliance in America, Europe. So, as Indonesia moves toward a cleaner and more sustainable energy, the conversation is no longer about just reducing emission, but also about ensuring that the transition is fair for everyone. And so this idea is not just a transition. To know more about this, we are joined by an Indonesian student at the Nova School of Law, Lisbon, Portugal, Monica Ndoen. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Mas. How are you?
I'm fine too. So, Monica, let's get right to the point. So, what does just transition actually mean in the Indonesian context of it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's not an easy question to answer, but I want to put us into context that just transition is closely connected to climate change, because the world needs to move towards dependence on fossil fuel to lower carbon emissions and limit global warming. So that's why when we talk about transition, it means we're moving away from fossil fuel to renewable energy. And the question is why we have just as a word before transition. And that's when we talk about fairness in the transition process. The transition should not only benefit large industries, but we also have to talk about who is it benefiting for. It should be for the people. And most of the time, it's the people that are affected by economic and environmental changes. The transition toward green energy should also remain fair and protects the indigenous people's rights and the livelihoods and communities during the process. And there should be balance between development and the social well-being. So climate actions, which is just transition. So just transition is one of the climate actions that we have now. It should go together with job opportunities, education access, and community welfare, including recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples.
Okay, that is really interesting. So can you explain to us that why is the justice aspect is often emphasized in discussion about the energy transition? Is there any justice to it, Monica?
Yeah, it's also a big question, because we see that there are layers when we talk about just transition, different communities experiencing different impacts. So some groups will benefit from development. So just transition is we are moving away from fossil fuel to green development, right? We can see now there are many benefiting from that, like investors, our government, of course, and there are like group of workers, but it's not equal to everyone. When it's happening on the other side of the coin, the others face land conflicts, environmental pressures. I can give you example. For example, like geothermal, hydropower, nickel projects in Indonesia, heavily impacting the rights of indigenous peoples, heavily impacting the workers as well. So back to the question, who are benefiting from this? That's when the justice should be one of the components, the main thing in just transition. And that the climate solution should not create new inequalities. So when we talk about social impact, it shouldn't create new problems for the people, that it should avoid sacrificing vulnerable groups for economic progress. Those are, workers that really work on the ground, indigenous peoples, farmers, fishers, everyone. And then participation and inclusion are important, that the participation of the people, the participation of young generation, women, and the whole process of just transition should be inclusive, not exclusive to certain groups that I have mentioned.
Okay, so what role can Indonesian students such as yourself and maybe other friends that are currently studying abroad right now play in supporting a just transition? Monica.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we as diaspora students, we spread in lots of countries. Like for example, myself in Portugal. The thing is, we as Indonesian students, we can learn from the countries that we are living in. I can learn from Portugal. Of course, there are pros and cons, right? But there's always like positive key takeaways that we can bring back to Indonesia and just inform the decision makers, governments. Look, this is working in Portugal, for example. It might work in Indonesia. Let's see if we can also, learn from this whole process. So we can be agent of change as students when we go back to Indonesia and serve our country, bringing perspective from different countries back to Indonesia. We can also be the agent of raising awareness about inclusive development. So all the things that I have mentioned, it should be also delivered by students of Indonesia, that this is the just transition that we hope it will look like in Indonesia. We hope this will happen in Indonesia. So raising awareness for those who are not aware of the real situation and how it should be, we can fill in the gap. And we can build collaboration and knowledge exchange. So as Indonesian students, we can also build discussion. We can connect with other students from other countries and be the agent of change in that discussion. I think the simplest way that I can think of. Yeah.
Okay, now, indigenous people, let's move around to that topic. Indigenous people are often mentioned in climate discussion. So why are they important in the just change agenda?
Yeah, okay, it's an interesting question. Well, in Indonesia, we call it as masyarakat adat, and in English term, it's indigenous peoples. They are important. Well, myself, I'm also an indigenous person. It's important because indigenous peoples are protecting forests, protecting biodiversities, ecosystems for generations. So protecting indigenous peoples means protecting all the resources within their territories. And that also one of the most important or the key of climate actions. So Indonesia as a state, as a country, should also recognize the rights of indigenous peoples. Now we don't have indigenous peoples law. It's only a bill for over a decade. So that's something that that Indonesia as a state should also progressing. By protecting indigenous peoples means we are protecting the nature, we're protecting the ecosystems, which also contribute to slower the impact of climate change. The traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples, sustainability, and currently, instead of protecting, they're mostly affected by development projects that I've mentioned, geothermal, nickel, you name it. hydropower, for example. So it should be the other way around compared to the reality that we have now. They hold key important roles in the context of climate change and just transition.
Okay. So, can you tell us what is the government responsibility in ensuring a just transition in Indonesia? Is it like needed immediately?
Yeah, one is, of course, we need to be ready with the transition, right? So it's not like flipping the coins. Okay, now we don't want to do the just transition, we flip the coins, but we need to be ready. The readiness of the country should be prepared by Indonesian government. One is protecting the rights and ensure fairness. The government must ensure development policies do not harm vulnerable communities, including indigenous peoples, including workers. So rights recognition of indigenous peoples is important, and policy that protecting the rights of the workers is also important because we are in the phase of transitioning. And we should also create inclusive and transparent policies. The participation part is also important because most likely, I think what I see now that we have is the approach is top down. It should be bottom up approach. So government should listen from the workers, from indigenous peoples, from those who are impacted by the transition, and we should design it that way, bottom up. And to prepare society for future transition. So the government should support education, green jobs, and sustainable economic opportunities for the people. Not to mention indigenous peoples that I have highlighted.
Okay, now we have some question about from one of the viewers who are currently watching the stream right now. Can you tell us, Monica, which energy source is better for Indonesia's future? Is it like nuclear power plant or solar, or maybe hydropower, wind, or biofuels? And should palm oil and sugarcane biofuels play a bigger role in the transition of the energy transition itself?
Well, it's a hard question because palm oil is really destructive to the environment. Yes, we can see lots of money from palm oil, but the destruction is there and it's not making the world any better in terms of climate change. So we see there are options like, yes, we have hydropower, we have geothermal, we have solar. But the thing is, we need to do it side by side together with the people. So the assessment is really important in doing all those projects. What happened now is investors, governments come to the community and come with a set of plan. That's when human rights abuses happen. So that's why I emphasize on the inclusivity and participation of the people. We can meet in the middle. And that's when I think we can talk about just transition. If the just transition that we are experiencing now, I think we can leave behind the just word. It's only like transition because it's not benefiting for the people.
That is an interesting take for that question.
Yeah.
And now I would like to ask the last question for today's interview. There's like two questions, actually. I'm going to push it into one. So we have a question that what can we do in daily life to realize in this just transition, and maybe what can both countries learn from each other in the implementation of just energy transition itself? Go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, I think for the first question, it's what can we do in daily life is really raising awareness. But before we raise awareness, we really need to learn what is just transition. So I think this is also a learning process. It's not only me talking to people, but also I will learn from people like, okay, what are the reality that we are facing? But raising awareness about what is just transition, really. It's something that we can do daily. We have social media, we can be agent of change by using our fingers in the right way, spreading the words. Another thing, responding to the last question, which is what we can learn, both like Indonesia context, Portugal. I think just one example, of course, there are many critics as well regarding just transition program in Portugal, but in 2021, Portugal closed its last coal power plants. In 2021, I think it's a progress where Portugal is trying to move away from fossil fuel to greener energy. But the problem is the transition creating social challenges. There are around like 450 workers at that time directly affected, and communities also experience uncertain about jobs, economic. So that's why the readiness should be prepared by the government. It's not flipping the coin. This is what happened when the government only flipping the coin in seconds. That's, I think, what Indonesia can learn. There are progress in Indonesia, but I think we can do better as a country, and perhaps this is something that Indonesia can learn. That transition can happen, but there is always a risk. So risk assessment is important, and then preparing for transition is also important.
Okay, thank you so much, Monica, for your time and your interesting insights on this topic. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Okay, Voice listener, as we know, a just energy transition, which is not only about the changing energy system, but also about ensuring the fairness, inclusion, and equal opportunities for all communities affected by the transition itself. And with a strong government commitment, along with the participation and support from all people, we can build a more sustainable future without leaving anyone behind. And so thank you so much, Voice listener, for joining us in this special episode of VOI Talk. Make sure to always tune in to our program and stay tuned with us always in Voice of Indonesia, from Indonesia to the world.